Welcome back to another episode of AFL by Jellyman here on Wednesday, the 17th of May, looking back at round 9, looking ahead to round 10, covering off with the stats, our round 9 picks, standings update, any other insights we pick up along the way. But getting straight into it, round 9 review and takeaways, obviously looking back to last Friday. Richmond beating Geelong 102-78 and should have really picked this one with the form Richmond had been in. They needed to turn it around, and obviously Geelong with 8 or so injuries at the moment and their VFL squad not having great depth as per se, and Richmond just played like their old selves, kicking 16-6. Geelong had as many scoring shots, 11-12, just didn't convert on it. Some of the top performers, obviously Dusty back to his old self, 19 touches, 4 goals. Tom Hawkins was unstoppable up forward for Geelong 3-1. Cochin also scored 3. Revolt and Mansell also 2 apiece. Jeremy Cameron was kept out of it. He did have 21 touches, so playing up more up the ground, but only a goal, so wasn't his damaging self. Takeaways from this one, obviously Richmond, are they back 2 wins in a row against West Coast, now Geelong? Geelong, obviously they'll be there at the end of the season, but then with a couple of injuries throughout, obviously an ageing list, blooding some new players as well, but where do they stand at the moment? Could they potentially lose this week to Fremantle as well? The other game on the Friday night, so 2 games on the Friday night, Gold Coast Suns smashing the Eagles 113-43, 16-17-6-7, a dominant performance by the Suns. 4 goals up forward for Big Benny King. Cheetahs come on and kick 2 as well as a sub late. Swallow 2, Lukosius 2, Chol 2. Allen still keeps that running tally of 2 goals as well. In the middle, Rao killed it along with Anderson as well. Off the back line for the Eagles, Duggan and Witherden obviously being peppered as per usual, and also Kelly with 26 as well. But takeaways from this game, Gold Coast needed to do what they had to do, and West Coast just uncompetitive at times there in this matchup. Saturday's games, so looking at Sydney versus Fremantle, we looked at this one and said we're going to stay away from a result because both teams needed a win. Luckily we did, and we just took the total points over. Dockers winning 103-86 at the SCG. Takeaways from this one is the forward line of the Freo Dockers looks good with the big 3 being Jackson, Treacy and a miss. They all work in tandem with each other, not actually spoiling one another, which is suitable. Schultz also at the feet kicked 4 goals. Jackson 3 goals. Treacy 2 goals. Frederick and a miss 2 goals apiece. And then on the other side, Gulden 39, but then the Dockers, Sarong and Brayshaw 30 plus each. And then also quite a few with 25 plus, but a good game for the Dockers, it was a need to win game for them, or else they were sort of heading in that bottom 8 territory, or staying in that bottom 8 territory, whereas I think Sydney are now staying in that bottom 8 territory, and Freo, if they win this week against Geelong in Perth, they're a good hope of lifting themselves up back into that top 8. North Melbourne versus Port Adelaide down there in Hobart. The Powell winning, as expected, 135-65. And not too much else to take away from this game other than the Port Power did what they needed to do and come away with another win, making it 6 straight. The next game on the day was Melbourne beating Hawthorn 103-49. The D's also doing what they needed to do. The dominant midfield was really good, but some really positive signs for Hawthorn with Day, Sicily, Nash, Seamus Mitchell, Warple and Newcomb, all 25 plus in that midfield against a solid Melbourne midfield as well. Oliver, Viney and Petrarca all had 30 plus each as well. Angus Brayshaw chipping with 25, but good to see the Hawks are able to get their hands on the footy through that midfield as well. Brisbane versus Essendon. Brisbane ran away with this one late in the piece, winning 87-45. The Dons, their biggest concern at the moment is how they're defending with a couple of players out and losing a couple of players, and what is their defensive identity. We know they're liking to attack going forward with a forward handball, but also Parish out for them in this one didn't help their cause. But the Lions kicking 5 goals in that last quarter and running away with that one, holding them to a goal. But it's also good to see that Brisbane, they're able to hold a team under 50 points, which they haven't been able to do so far this season. Last game of the evening was Carlton versus the Western Bulldogs. The Bulldogs winning 79-59 at Marvel, and the Blues unable to moving a few magnets around, and the Doggies just dominating this one. Curnow still kicked 2, but obviously 3 behinds. Mackay, he didn't perform too well either. And in the midfield, both midfields went head to head, but it really was the Doggies show in the end, and they come out with another gritty win. Sunday's game, so 2 games on the Sunday, Adelaide versus St Kilda and Collingwood versus GWS. Adelaide coming out of the blocks fast again at home, 121-69, and the Saints having one of those games where they couldn't do much right. Not too much else to take away from that game other than Adelaide looked the real deal, and they've got a lot of easy games to come as well. Easy games is in bottom 8 teams, so they'll be there hopefully within the top 8 towards the back end of the season. They play an exciting attacking brand of football, which is good to see. And Collingwood, they upped the pressure gauge on Sunday afternoon against the Giants. The Giants just couldn't handle it. They win 120-55. And can the Pies keep up that sort of pressure throughout the season? Nick Dacos, 41 touches. Tom Mitchell, 36 touches. Caniglio and De Goey also performed well. Tom Green, another 30-plus game as well there for the Giants. But looking back at our round 9 picks, so we had the Suns on a Friday night, 40 plus at $3 for 2 units. We also then had a multi on the Saturday game. So Sydney versus Freo, total points over 166.5. Port Adelaide 25 plus, Melbourne 25 plus, Brisbane 25 plus. That was 642, 1 unit on that one. We then had an alternative total points line for the Sydney versus Freo game. That one came to over 177.5 at 255 for 2 units. North Melbourne versus Port, we had Port Adelaide 40 plus at 225, 2.5 units on that one. The Power also over 98.5 points there at 186, 1.5 units on that one. The Melbourne Hawthorn game, Melbourne minus 49.5, 220, so an alternative line. And then Petrarca and Oliver 30 plus each, 1.5 units for 320 there. The Lions versus Essendon, we had Brizzy Lions head-to-head. We weren't sure what the margin was going to be like in this one. They did kick away in the end, but we had the unders under 188.5, so that was $2, 3 units on that one, being confident there. Then Sunday's games, the Crows with over 155.5, 250 there, 2 units. And then 2+ goals, Rankin, Walker, Higgins, 575 there for 1 unit. And in Collingwood GWS, we had Nick Dacos and Green 30 plus, and then 25 plus Caniglio for $3 for 1.5 units. All up the round for us, round 9 was plus 18.99 units, so quite a solid round there. And across the last 4 weeks, we've been in the green week on week, which is also a positive. So the weekend just gone, 18.99. Prior, round 8, 4.73. The weekend prior, 6.88. And then 22.58 in round 6. So up across the last 4 weeks, the last month of football is 53.17 units, which is quite a solid month of footy there, and hopefully building throughout this season, sort of getting a good gist of things and where teams are currently sitting in the AFL. Looking at the ladder for all these squads here, so Collingwood, Melbourne, Brisbane, Port Adelaide make up the top 4. The next 4 are St Kilda, Western Bulldogs, Geelong, Adelaide. That, to me, in my eyes, the only team that can potentially move out of that with some form slump is St Kilda. We like the top 8 where it's sitting at the moment. Just outside the 8, Carlton, Essendon, Gold Coast, Freo, Richmond. The 2 teams we see potentially likely to move up are Gold Coast and Freo. Richmond could make a run as well, but I just don't think they had the consistency in them. And we think the bottom sort of 5 is set with Sydney, GWS, North Melbourne, West Coast and Hawthorn. Sydney just have too many injuries and too many key positions at the moment, and players not playing consistently enough. 3 teams still on a lot of consecutive losses, so 4 teams, 5 teams. Essendon lost 4 in a row, Sydney lost 4 in a row, North, West Coast and Hawthorn. Hawthorn and West Coast play each other this weekend. North Melbourne and Sydney also play each other, so there's going to be teams, unless they draw, that will come off those consecutive losing streaks. In terms of winning streaks, Collingwood winning streak, Melbourne, Brisbane and Port Adelaide all winning streaks as well, and the Doggies have won their last 4 there as well. Looking into round 10 preview and stats. So the Friday night game, we've got Port Adelaide versus Melbourne at the Adelaide Oval, 7:50. This will be a good matchup. Actually can't wait for this one. The Power, they've won their last 6 games and 92 plus points in 3 of the last 4 games. We'll have a look at the Port's record at Adelaide Oval across the last few matches. The Demons 90 plus points in 7 of the last 9 games, and they've won their last 4 games. We'll also have a look at their record at Adelaide Oval, but a few weeks ago they did lose to Essendon there. Butters 25 plus disposals in his last 6 games. Houston 15 plus in all 9 games, 20 plus disposals in his last 5 as well. Finlayson 2 plus goals in 3 of his last 4 games. It'll be interesting to see if Charlie Dixon comes back because Todd Marshall is out again. Powell-Pepper 1 plus goal in his last 7 games as well. Jack Viney 20 plus disposal in his last 6 games. Brayshaw 20 plus in his last 4 games. Pickett 1 plus goal in all 7 games. And Rooyen a 1 plus goal in his last 7 games as well. Saturday's games. So I guess for that one, what we're looking at, we need to have a look a bit more into Melbourne's form at Adelaide Oval, and also when the teams come out, that'll be interesting as well. But Melbourne have actually won the last 3 of recent times against the Power in low-scoring affairs, 83-69 in round 18 last year, 68-36 in Adelaide in round 4 last year, and then 86-55 also in Adelaide round 17 the year prior. So Melbourne have won this matchup in recent times. I think it'll come down to health of both sides, but at first glance, we do like the D's to get the win in this one, just without those key forwards up there for Port Adelaide, and also it being a smaller midfield without a real attacking ruckman against Gulden and Grundy. Melbourne should get the win in this one. The Saturday games, so we've got North Melbourne versus Sydney. We won't touch on this one too much. The stats will be there in the show notes if you like. But Sydney need a win. This one's at Marvel Stadium as well. Sydney did win in round 21 last season against North Melbourne, 126-88. And then the season prior, 86-75, 82-51. Sydney are quite well favoured, 113-605. Don't be surprised if North get up and about this one and cover that line. But we won't go too much deeper into that one. The Doggies versus Adelaide at Mars Stadium in Ballarat. So this one will be out, not the bush, but out sort of country town. Last season, round 6, the Doggies lost the Adelaide Crows. I think that one was at Mars as well, 63-62. The season prior, the Doggies beat the Crows well, 105-56, and the season prior, 111-54. But it's obviously a different Crows side. The Crows, if they can attack like they have been, and it's a dry day out there in Ballarat, expect them to beat the Doggies just how they attack, because the Doggies, although they can defend well and they've got a solid midfield, when it comes to scoring, they haven't proven they can score enough points this season, but they have won their last 4 games. The Crows won 5 of the last 7, and 4 of 5 wins have been by 30 plus points, 72 plus points in 8 of 9 games, and 170 plus total points in 7 of 9 games as well. McRae, I guess what we'll be looking at this one is the last few games at Mars Stadium as well, the total over-under, the head-to-heads, etc., etc. Jack McRae, 20 plus disposals in all 9 games. Caleb Daniel, 20 plus in his last 5 games. Norton, 1 plus goal in all 9 games. Scott, 1 plus goal in his last 4 games. Siligo, 20 plus disposals in his last 4 games. Smith, 15 plus in all 9 games. Walker, 2 plus goals in 5 of his last 6 games. And Pedler, 1 plus goal in his last 6 games as well. We're liking the Crows in this one, depending on the weather. We'll have to double check that, but just we like the Crows' scoring power and how they move the football. Much like the Doggies are pretty much like the St Kilda Saints from last week. And if the Crows can move the ball like they did against the Saints, they should get a win in this matchup. Fremantle versus Geelong, and we've already sort of briefly touched on this one, but we believe Freo can get a win if the Cats are without quite a few players. The Dockers did beat Geelong down at GMHBA last season in round 7, 69-66. But then in Perth, the season prior, 100-31. And then the season prior, 48-16. I'm gathering that was potentially a wet weather game. The Dockers have scored 100 plus points 4 times this season, which is already nearly more than last season, but they've allowed 85 plus points in 5 of their last 6 games. The Cats, 167 plus total points in 8 of 9 games. So if the weather's nice over there in Perth, expect an attacking game from both sides. The Dockers are outsiders at 242. The Cats are 157. As we said, we need to see who's in and out in this one before we make any rash decisions. In terms of stats, Clark, 15 plus disposals in all 9 games. O'Meara, 15 plus in all 9 games. Swikowski, 1 plus goal in his last 3 games. And Tracy, 1 plus goal in his last 3 games as well. Atkins, 15 plus disposals in his last 5, as well as Blizzard's 15 plus in his last 5. Oliver Henry, 1 plus goal in 8 of 9 games. And Simpson coming into the squad there, 1 plus goal in his last 4 games. But as we mentioned, total points over in this one should be a lock. And we like the Dockers to win, but we'll need to see who the Cats potentially bring in there as well. But if they still have the same injuries they did last week, we like the Dockers to get a win as they climb back, hopefully into the 8 for them, for their sake. Brisbane versus Gold Coast. So the Q clash up there in the Gabba. Recent encounters have favoured the Lions in very, very high scoring affairs. The Lions obviously favoured 125 to the Gold Coast Suns $4. The Lions, they've won their last 6 games, 100 plus points in 5 of their last 6 games, 174 plus total points in 5 of their last 6 games. The Suns, 72 plus points in 7 of the last 8 games and have won 3 of their last 4 games as well. Lachie Neale, 20 plus disposals in all 9 games. Zorko, 15 plus in all 7. Hipwood, 1 plus goal in his last 7 games. Zach Bailey, 1 plus goal in his last 4 games. Noah Anderson, 25 plus in his last 6 games. Powell, 20 plus disposal in his last 4 games. King, 1 plus goal in all 8 games and 2 plus goals in his last 5 games. Chol, 1 plus goal in 4 of his last 5 games as well. This one's an interesting one just because the Lions have dominated this matchup in the past and depending on the weather. Saturday evening in Brisbane, I think the Gold Coast Suns will be competitive in this one, but I think the Lions at the Gabba will be too strong for them. But it won't be a thumping just with the way Gold Coast are playing defensively at the moment. And then dream time at the G, Essendon versus Richmond. They're on Saturday night. Looking at the Dons, so the Dons 77 plus points in 7 of 9 games. They've allowed 75 plus points in 8 of 9 games. The Tigers 78 plus points in 5 of the last 6 games, and they've won 2 in a row. Redmond 15 plus in all 9 games. Ridley 15 plus in all 7 games. Perkins 1 plus goal in 8 of 9 games. Stringer 1 plus goal in his last 7 games. Taranto 25 plus in all 9 games. Rioli 20 plus in all 9 games. Ryan 1 plus goal in 5 of his last 6 games, and Bolton 1 plus goal in 7 of 9 games. We like the Tigers in this one to make it 3 in a row. Essendon might be able to bring back in Parrish as well as Ridley from concussion, but we'll have to wait and see. But even then, we like the Tigers. The way they played last week, the way they can own the G, and their defensive identity is just there, unlike the Dons, as well as they need a win if they want to play finals footy this year. I think whoever wins this game has the potential to be able to play finals footy. Whoever loses probably stays in that bottom 8. Last season, round 23, the Tigers smacked the Dons by 66 points, 141 to 75. This game last season, 80 to 48 Richmond's way. I expect it to be something similar to like that, something like 90 to 50 odd Richmond's way there in Melbourne, depending on how the weather looks Saturday night. Sunday's games, Hawthorn versus West Coast, one we won't touch on for too much either. The wooden spoon bowl or the spoon bowl. The Hawks beat the Eagles last year 102 to 77. This one is down in Launceston, so I'll have to check on the weather. The Hawks should win this one as well. Obviously, West Coast having to travel out there. But yeah, the stats will be in the show notes, a bit more on that game. Carlton versus Collingwood. So obviously Carlton lost quite a few in a row at the moment. Collingwood did win this matchup twice last season, 75 to 74 in round 23, kicking the Blues out of the finals, and then 79 to 75 in round 11, beating the Blues in this same matchup. We like the Pies again, just they're sort of dominating at the moment, and it'll have to be a big performance from the Blues if they're wanting any chance to win. In terms of stats, Carlton, they've lost 4 of their last 5 games, and they've allowed 79 plus points in 6 of the last 8 games, but 180 total points or less than 7 of 9 games. So they're allowing points but not scoring them. The Pies, 8 wins from 9 games, 6 of 8 wins by 1 to 39. Walsh, 25 plus in his 5 games. Hewitt, 20 plus in his last 4 games. Durden, 1 plus goal in his 8 games. Owies, 1 plus goal in his 4 games. Dacos, that's of the Nick kind, 25 plus in all 9 games, 30 plus in 7 of 9 games. Sidebottom, 20 plus in his last 5. Ash Johnson, 1 plus goal in his last 7 games. And then Hoskin Elliott, 1 plus goal in his last 3 games. We like the Pies in that one, but Carlton should be able to put up a big fight and keep it close in this matchup. GWS versus St Kilda up there in Sydney. The St Kilda will be looking to bounce back from last week. So will GWS. Both teams playing on the Sunday last week, so having 7-day breaks. St Kilda has won this matchup the last 3 times, 77-60 last season, 86-78 the season prior, and then 82-30 the season before that as well. Will Toby Rooyen come back in? We'll need to check on that. The Giants aren't favoured to win at 217. St Kilda won at 69. The Giants have allowed 74 plus points in all 9 games, 86 plus points in 7 of 9 games, and 70 plus points in 7 of 9 games as well. And there's quite a few stats there as well for individuals. But that will be something we'll look into a bit further in the week. We'll also have round 10 best bets on our Instagram and TikTok, so take a look into those. But that's all we've got for this week. Feel free to like, follow, and subscribe on Instagram, Facebook, as well as obviously TikTok and YouTube. All the best for your weekend ahead of AFL punting.